All right. What's up, boys? Um, I'm going to be going over, I'm making a video here for all of our character development progressions, um, and just kind of going over what they are, explaining them, and so everyone has just kind of a clear understanding of what they are and what we expect as coaches for our players to be representing, just so that we can all be on the same page and we can all make sure that our players are getting the best coaching in terms of our character development on days that like we're not specifically focusing on it, right? So we can actually have an idea of what everything is. Um, the biggest thing, I mean, the first thing to start off with is why character development progressions are so important, um, right? Because I mean, as a golf academy, right, our goal is to make sure that our kids become the best version of golfers that they can be, right? And hopefully play collegiate golf, play professional golf, and make a living playing golf, right? That's like the big picture end goal. Um, with character development, we got to make sure that these kids are, I mean, they're growing into exceptional human beings, right? And I think that's more important than golf. Um, I think the person that they become 5, 6 years down the line is more important than the golfer they become 5 to 6 years down the line. Now, I think that they both, being a person and being a golfer, I think they move in the same direction. Going through these character developments, right? They're going to become great human beings while becoming great golfers because of the progressions and the system that we've got set up. But we can't skip over the fact that we really want these kids to become exceptional human beings. Um, so I'm going to go over all four of them really quick, just kind of what they are, how we as coaches can make sure that they are taken care of. So the number one thing, and I think it's the most important one, is self-talk. That's number one. And I think it's something that we see on a daily basis that just kind of is lacking. I think a lot of our kids, especially in that teenager, high school range, their self-talk is pretty atrocious. Just the casual conversations, the casual things that they say to themselves, makes a huge impact on what they believe in themselves as and how they carry themselves in the future. Um, so as coaches, I think we need to be very, very, very cognizant on what their self-talk is and being able to like address it immediately and not let it continue, because they've been talking to themselves in a certain way for so long that it's become a habit. Their self-talk is an absolute habit, and that habit is going to make an impact on how they think of themselves down the line or how they think of themselves in a tournament. So if you guys could think about like, man, if I sit here or if I sit on the golf course or if I sit during a practice session and I continually tell myself that I'm a terrible golfer, I'm a terrible ball striker, I'm a terrible putter. If they say that to them, if they say that to themselves like 3 times a day, 7 days a week for a year, that's going to imprint in their brain. So it's important for them, right? So like if we're coaching and we're on the back of the range and we hear someone tell themselves that they're a terrible golfer or they're a terrible ball striker or whatever, we got to be able to stop them and kind of have them understand why it's so important that their self-talk needs to be good, right? Have them understand that like the words that you say to yourselves have an impact on how your subconscious mind thinks of yourself, right? So like 5 years down the line or 5 months down the line or 5 days down the line, if I'm continually telling myself that I am a terrible putter, that's going to have a subconscious effect on how I stroke a putt in a tournament, right? So they need to understand the dramatic impacts of how our self-talk actually makes an impact in our lives. Um, and so as a coach, the biggest thing we can do is just immediately address it. If you hear it if you hear any negative self-talk, address the self-talk and kind of have them understand why it's so important, why we're focusing on it so much, why we're trying to change the patterns so that they can understand that the words that they tell themselves actually do make a really big impact in their well-being. Self-talk is super important. I think it's the most important one, and I love it so much. So yeah, number two, and I'm just ranking these kind of in my personal opinion. Of course, all four are important. Um, the second one I'm going to talk about is gratitude, and I think we've been doing a really good job about this in the last month or so, kind of getting in the habit of talking about it, at least bringing it to their attention. Gratitude is one of the coolest ways that these kids can change their mindset. They can change the emotions that they experience on a daily basis. There's a really awesome study that's been done where when your brain is in a state of gratitude, right? So when I'm sitting here and if I'm journaling and I'm journaling about things I'm grateful for, if I'm in that process and my body's fully ingrained in that process, it is physically impossible for me to experience negative emotions. Okay, so like stress or nervousness or anger, some of the common disempowering emotions that we experience on the golf course, it is physically impossible for my brain to experience those emotions if I'm in a state of gratitude. So, with that being said, anytime this is how us as coaches can kind of start to implement it, and I've already started to challenge a lot of our players when they're doing paradigms. I'm just asking them to do 15 to 30 seconds of gratitude after they're done with paradigms, right? It takes no more than 30 seconds to think of 5 things that you're grateful for and just write them down. And I'm just getting them in the habit of even just consciously thinking about the process of gratitude. For a lot of them, they have no idea what it is, which is really cool, to be able to express to them this new process. And it takes 15 to 30 seconds, which is the best part. I mean, it's really quick. Just boom. What are you grateful for today? Boom. Um, so as coaches, just being able to see them and be like, hey, you do your gratitude today? And they'd be like, nope. And then on the moment, just be like, hey, what's one thing you're grateful for? Just one thing. Because it shocks the system. It gets their brain thinking in a different way. And like I said, when we're thinking about gratitude, our body cannot experience negative emotions. That's a scientific study that's been done, which is just super awesome. So we just need to be more cognizant and more conscious of just what are you grateful for today? Or have you done your gratitude? Did you do your gratitude? Yes, no? Okay, let's get it done. Just so that they're getting in that habit of going through that process. Because eventually, the goal is for them to go onto the golf course, and if they ever find themselves experiencing negative emotions, they're able to pull themselves out of that by going through this gratitude process. That's like the big thing, and being able to, and not only golf, like we can throw golf aside, like I want them to be able to just wake up and be like, I got a pretty awesome life. Or like they show up and they're just like they're more consciously grateful for what they have around them, and it lets them appreciate what they have more. And now, with the letter writing that I've kind of brought up, um, maybe it's just like a once a month thing. Like, hey, on the first day of the month, like this is my ticket for the month of class or something like that, just so that they're getting in the habit of writing a letter and expressing their gratitude and their thankfulness towards someone's in their life. But that's something we can discuss and kind of hopefully figure out in the future. Okay, so the third thing is acts of service, and I think we've started to like really hit this one on the head really well. Acts of service is just is the whole process of giving, right? It's doing something selfless, unconditionally, to give back in some way. Tony Robbins is like, he has this quote that says, "It's the secret to living is giving," right? So if we're in a state of giving or a state of service, we as humans gain so much more emotionally, physically, spiritually. So we started to do this with having the JCs mentor the future elites. I've had a couple of my dev kids mentor the peewees on some days. Being able to have these young adults get into an act of service, just small or big, just so they can experience what it's like, right? It does a lot for our mental and our physical well-being when we're in acts of service. So like on the back of the range, right? We've got a really nice setup that we're going to have, being able for them to understand why it's so important to leave it better than they found it, right? Because when they go off to school or they go back home, for them to bring that process of like, I need to leave my kitchen better than I found it. Or I need to leave my classroom better than I found it. Or this piece of trash on the ground, I need to pick it up because that's just the right thing to do. So for them to be able to get in the habit of being in service mode, like service, 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 like what we're doing, like we show up and we're just like, how do I serve these tremendous kids? If we can get them just thinking about it fractionally, right? One thing, like, hey, let's pick up one piece of trash every single day for 365 days. Like, how dramatic of an impact does that make in their life and the life around them? So just make, as coaches, we got to hold them accountable to cleaning up after, making things look better than how they found it, right? That's pretty easy. Having mentorship days or days where an older junior champions works with a future elite or vice versa. Like we have everyone working together and just for everyone to experience what acts of service actually feels like and how cool it is. And even like once a month or every 3 months, maybe we can have like a little like food drive or something to where like we're volunteering or creating bags to give out to the homeless or something like that, right? Just so that they're cognizant, they're conscious of what an act of service looks like and how it feels. And that's just, it's so cool. Just to talk about it, it's so cool. Last one, I'll go over this one. The fourth one, focus, is more, it's not as crazy character development as the other three, but it's still super important, right? Just getting them in the habit of making sure that they know and they're aware of what they're focusing on. Because so many of them will just sit over the golf ball and when they're on the back of the range and they'll just hit, and there's no focus, there's no anything going on in their brain, right? They just hit, golf ball, hit, golf ball, hit, and there's no real rhyme or reason to what they're doing. So to get them to understand what focus is and how focus can be really important in the process of getting better as a golfer and just as a normal everyday human being as a teenager, right? Like if you go to school and you're focusing on what we're doing after school, you're not getting the most out of the day at school, right? Like we want to make sure that they're focused and they've got their full undivided attention on a specific area, for them to master whatever they're doing, right? If they show up to golf and they're focusing on their personal life or they're focusing on school or X, Y, and Z, they're not going to get the most out of academy. And we got to be able to have them be focused, but also understand why focus is so important, right? Why is it so important that I focus on this golf shot and go through the process? Well, here's the reasons why, right? We want to make sure that our body and our mind is able to lock in and focus on that 15 seconds over the golf ball, because in a tournament, I got to be able to lock in, perform the golf shot, execute it, and then move on to the next one, right? We're not going to be able to execute as a golfer if we're not focused. So just them being able to consciously be more focused and realize why focus is so important, I think will do a lot of good justice. So those are the four. And I have the character development progressions are on a document already. This is a good way for everyone to just auditorily hear it. Because obviously this video is going to do a little more detail than what the sheet of paper does. So yeah, just making sure that we're all conscious, and as coaches, we got to be able to live by these four as well, right? So we're focused, we're expressing gratitude, we're talking to ourselves in a positive manner, and we're providing acts of service unconditionally. If our kids can see us leading through example, by leading by example with these four progressions of character development, it's going to be a lot easier for them to buy into them and actually perform them as well. They're not going to be as quick to not want to follow them, right? So we got to make sure that we're leading by example and that we're showing them that these four character development progressions are really important, and that we envision and we embody them as coaches and show them, what it's all about. So cool.